So now we're going to move a little further north now to the Jabalia refugee camp, because the Jabalia refugee camp, and if you haven't watched our program for the last 2 weeks, they were extended resistance shows, and I did more than an hour on Jabalia, because the resistance in Jabalia has been unbelievable. The Battle of Jabalia is the same. Again, First Intifada began in Jabalia, not just began, but was fought in Jabalia. In all through the Second Intifada, Jabalia was the heart of the fighting. And in fact, after the Israelis said they were leaving the Gaza Strip, their last operation was to besiege Jabalia, a 17-day war on Jabalia that looked in many ways like the war we see today, but localized just in a small spot. They destroyed everything. The interviews with people say, they say we had no phones, no power, no water, no food, no medicine. All the things we're hearing about now, completely encircled by Israeli armored vehicles in the 2004 invasion. So this is the heart of the resistance, and it always has been. With 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜, these are the two most trained, most highly trained, most effective Qassam Brigades, battalions. They're battalions under their brigades. And so if you didn't see the last 2 weeks of this show, I really hope you'll go back and watch the 2 segments on Jabalia. You can find them on the YouTube channel very easily. And yeah, so in the Jabalia camp on Saturday night at midnight local time, there was an announcement from the Qassam Brigade spokesperson, Abu Ubaidah, that said he was giving a speech in 15 minutes. So he gave time for everyone to crowd around their televisions all over the Arab world, all over Palestine, less so in Gaza because there's a complete blackout from the north to the south. But he gave a statement. Let's throw that up tomorrow, number 40. A complex operation carried out by our fighters this Saturday afternoon in the north of the Gaza Strip. It was in Jabalia camp, where fighters lured a Zionist force into one of the tunnels in the Jabalia refugee camp and ambushed them inside the tunnel and at its entrance. So they were able, by the grace and strength of God, to engage with the IDF members from this force from point-blank range. The fighters then attacked the reinforcement force that rushed to the scene with explosive devices and directly hit them as well. The fighters withdrew after blowing up the tunnel used in this operation, and all had inflicted casualties on all members of this Israeli force. Between killed, wounded, and captured, and seized its military equipment. Captured. So what we're hearing Abu Ubaidah say, for every day the enemy spends in its aggression on our people and our families, they will have to pay a high price. But what we're hearing is Abu Ubaidah telling the world, and the latest of our 3 operations, sorry, is that looping? A complex operation carried out by our fighters this Saturday afternoon, where they lured them into a force. So he came out on Saturday night at 12:30 and gave this speech. It was an audio message, but people were all crowded around the TVs waiting to listen to it. And all of a sudden, there was just an enormous cheer broke out because this is the first time since October 7th that a soldier has been captured. Israel has fought this whole war to avoid their soldiers being captured. That's why they don't come out of their tanks until the very last moment. That's why you never see dismounted soldiers walking alongside tanks covering territory. The tanks drive them to the front door of a house they believe is safe, and they move into that house. That's the closest you'll see. You'll never see what you saw with the Americans in Iraq, where you have infantry escorting the tanks and looking down the streets, looking for snipers. So this was the first capture operation and sent people celebrating out into the streets. And if people think that the massacre in Rafah the next day is totally divorced from this military success, I think you're missing a key point of the way Israel operates. If you look at their history, you can see it all through. In the 2014 war in 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜, the Israelis moved into the eastern edge of Gaza City and got smoked. They withdrew immediately. They thought they had 7 captured soldiers in that operation, and they attacked like that. in Shujaia and carried out a massacre of the type that, until this war, was the worst massacre that they had carried out in the last 2 decades against Palestinians. Of course, massacres from 1948. So then the next one, let's go to the next one here, because so Qassam followed this up by showing the video. And so we see here, we're seeing Czech submachine guns, 9mm submachine guns. And then this says to be continued, because they're not going to instantly say who the captives are or how many of them are captives. But we have edited this video. This video shows a fighter in flip-flops in the tunnel, dragging a special forces soldier by his arms, dragging his feet through the tunnel. So it's clear they have at least him. And we're showing here kits from 3 soldiers. So the implication is that there is at least 1, possibly 2. And if this guy wasn't dead, there could be as many as 3 that were captured. The IDF immediately came out, even though it was 12:30 on a Saturday night. They came out and said it's not true. That it happened. But it's an interesting story because, and I don't want to get too speculative here, but the Thursday of last week, 2 days before this operation, the Israelis said that they found 2 batches of captives, which is the first time that they've done that in this way, where they believe they've operated on intelligence. And it's something that I've watched for this whole war, because the signposts of marginal military success are things like you'd see them fighting in tunnels. You'd see weapons captured, not just 1 or 2 weapons. You'd see a whole bunch of Yassins if you were overrunning their bases, Qassam bases. And crucially, you would be getting intelligence from the fight. You'd be getting field intelligence from overrunning the bases. You'd be getting field intelligence from the fighters that you're capturing, that they're not. They're capturing innocent civilians who don't know anything, and don't give them. And that's why 8 months into this war, Israel can't find its captives. So this week, on Thursday, the IDF says that the 4 that were located were in a tunnel in Jabalia camp, in the same area where the bodies of another 4 were recovered a week earlier. The IDF says that troops of the 75th Armored Battalion killed a terror operative who was apparently a lookout over the area where the bodies were held. So already dead bodies. They killed 1 guard. The soldiers then raided and captured the site. A short while later, troops of the Yahalom Tunnel Engineering Unit and Shin Bet units and special forces of the Israeli Military Intelligence Directorate entered the tunnel and located the bodies. The bodies were extracted from the tunnel in a complex overnight operation. The IDF says the locations of the bodies that were extracted were from intelligence obtained in recent days by the military and Shin Bet. We have not seen that throughout the entire war. I read their reports every day their field reports. So Israel got one-of-a-kind intelligence where there was only 1 guard guarding these bodies. They got these 8 bodies, and then less than 36 hours later, they're lured into a tunnel, and they're fighting in a tunnel that they didn't intend to fight in, and have captured soldiers. I don't want to speculate. We'll follow this story. This was the first time, and I had flagged that what I just read you, I had flagged that 3 days before the soldier capture operation. I had flagged that as being unique. We hadn't seen the Israelis use that kind of language, which is something that I've been looking for throughout the war, to see if they're actually having success. Because if that's the case, you'd get intelligence, and you might find a batch of captives, 4 or 5. You might find them here or there. They haven't done any of that. They've only found civilian captives that were held by civilian families that were trying to sell them back to Israel, and so had made communications with Israel. And then Israel raided that place in Rafah a while back. People may remember that. There was 2 older people in that that were rescued from not from fighters, from a civilian home, that were actually hostages from civilians. But we haven't seen them find any of their soldiers, and that's I think something that's important to note. So let's go to number 46, because we're still in the Jabalia refugee camp, because Jabalia has been fighting fiercely for the last 3 weeks. So number 46 is Qassam versus, so you can see the Qassam fighter through, again, the military, through the rebar of someone's house here with a Yasin 105. He's going to hit a tank that's also pointing the tank barrel at the cameraman in this shot. This shot doesn't show us much except the proximity that the fighters are getting to, because the cameraman is separate from the Yasin fire. And so that's significant. And if we go to number 48 after this rolls, we can see the fighters using the terrain here, moving through these destroyed buildings that he's got an RPG-7 here. It's not a Yasin, and he's got an 85 millimeter warhead, which is not a tandem charge. And he comes out this window and he looks and he sees a Namr troop carrier with a Merkava tank behind it. He fires from an elevated firing position down onto the tank. And the single charge warhead, 85 millimeter, is not as good as the Yasin 105. It doesn't have the tandem charge, but firing down on top of the top armor of the armored personnel carrier is what Qassam is trained. That's one spot that they're trained to hit on. And again, the fighter uses, actually it's a 70 millimeter. I think I might have said it was an 85 millimeter. It's a bit smaller than that. It's a 70 millimeter anti-tank round. And you can see them just using the alleys. You can see them using the rubble of their villages where they live to move around, going up the stairs instead of firing from the ground level, getting an elevated firing position. And just look out that window and look at the destruction. They just completely destroyed the place. The places are left standing, but they're all trashed. If anything's left standing, it's completely trashed. And that's the places that Palestinians are going to go back and live in. They're going to go clean that up after this battle, and the family will make do with what the situation is for the house. Let's do 45 tomorrow. This is an Al-Ghul sniper attack here. You can see the Qassam fighter pulling it out of his bag. You can see him set up here inside the window, unlike the Israelis that stick their guns outside the window. You can see the cameraman has a view of these dismounted soldiers standing in front of destroyed shops. These are shops that are destroyed. Oh, that pause means we don't get to see the shot. Again, a great edit by Tamara there. But unfortunately, you don't see the kill, but it's clearly a kill. He falls forward in a way that you do when you're hit. And the Israelis have claimed 5 seriously wounded soldiers in these operations. They just say the north. They don't say Jabalia camp when they do it. They just say the north. So let's go to 47 here, because this is actually interesting. This is the Al-Mudi brigade of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades. There's a lot going on here. So he's throwing water on the floor here. Not entirely sure. There's a couple of theories about what he's doing to pat down the dust that that the gunfire would put dust in the air. I think more likely one is that there's actually blast residue because these buildings have been bombed, and he's worried that the muzzle flash will trigger the blast residue that's in the dust. So not just the dust itself, but look at him here. He's wearing a tanker's helmet. He's wearing a tank crew helmet, what appears to be an IDF tank crew helmet. You can see it there under his yellow headband. So this is an Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade sniper. They don't have this weapon. They haven't used this weapon all war. And then we have this guy show up who's wearing apparently an IDF helmet. We'll have to ask him about that. He's using here a rangefinder scope secondary to calculate the distance, the height. You got to calculate the height, the distance. He's doing it for the sun. He's correcting for the sun. you know, for wind, for gravity, for the drag, just doing ballistics calculations to see this soldier here. He's got in he's got a cover over his scope here so that the sun doesn't flash off the scope and give up his position. And then he's going to fire, and I can tell you this one. You can watch it also on my Twitter. That one is straight through the shoulder blades of that soldier with a weapon that you don't survive that shot with. And so really interesting. Let's do it one more time tomorrow because there's so many elements of this one. So look at his helmet. He's wearing a tanker helmet. First time we've seen that. Is it presumably a captured tanker helmet? He's using his rangefinder separately here and making his calculations. Qassam doesn't show us this part of the fight. 𝐄𝐥𝐿 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐫𝐿 is showing us it. And likely it's a 𝐄𝐥𝐿 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐫𝐿 weapon that he's using. It could be an Al-Ghul, but it looked like a Sayed 50 cal. It's not easy to tell them apart all the time without being able to see the markings on the side. They're virtually identical weapons. One has a bit bigger of a barrel, and one can chamber 14.5 millimeter instead of the 12.7. So a lot going on in that video that we're going to have to ask him about. But that's the first Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades video that we have seen from their fighters. And there's just a couple more here. Sniper attack.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.